analysis specifically. In very broad terms, I see it as a way of thinking about how, in a particular context, and that's usually a country context, how structures and institutions, so that's formal and informal institutions and relationships, shape the incentives and behavior of actors, individual actors and institutional actors. And specifically, I think what's of interest is the relationship between political interests and economic interests, and how they can either conflict or come together to support progressive change.
I think today we had a very good and rich discussion about what political economy analysis really is and what it brings of new thoughts into development aid. The starting question was, is this just a fad, or is it some reality in a different way of approaching development issues?
In our view at SIDA, we don't call them political economy analysis. We're more sort of upfront. We call them power analysis. And that's sort of, it's almost self-explanatory. These are studies about sort of underlying power dynamics and power structures and relationships that shape sort of the political environment in which our development cooperation is working.
See, this workshop has been very important to us to know more about other experiences in political analysis, political economy and governance analysis that has been done by other countries and cooperation agencies and other multilaterals, and also share the experience from UNDP, in this particular case from the Latin American Caribbean region, where we've been working in political analysis for quite some time. And so we presented here the case of Bolivia, one of the most extended and with more lessons to learn, and how we use political analysis and scenario building through this regional project PAPET as a key input for the role of the UN coordinator, the UN country team, and also with other international cooperation agencies and actors to facilitate dialogue processes.
Well, these analyses actually bring quite a few advantages and value added, so to speak. They serve to make our expectations more realistic when it comes to timelines for when you can see results through development cooperation. And I think that could sometimes be a quite controversial finding for politicians, maybe even taxpayers, who expect results very quickly. So I think the studies for us have been quite illuminative in making us understand how change, in the sense of pro-poor sort of reforms, happen, or why they don't.
I think it's very important that Norway, to a greater extent than today, uses analysis like this one to inform the way they engage in developing countries.
What if Norway decides not to do any political economy analysis?
Then I think it will be business as usual. Business as usual and with limited results.
I think for Norway, and I'm sure for Sweden also, we have a tradition of being quite sector-oriented and often perceived as having good technical knowledge. For us, it's a challenge to be an actor in a wider sense. To not only be the outside experts that promote our technical solutions, but really have a role into change process and reform processes.
For example, the forestry sector, we're putting a lot of money into there. This is very much the Jeffrey Sachs approach, that if you put a lot of money in there, things will fix themselves because you have a lot of resources available. But it's not a matter of money, actually. In a lot of cases, it's about politics. So you have to go in and look at other things. It's about changing mindsets. It's about getting a better grip of who actually makes the decisions, who are people listening to? What are the economic interests that underlies political decisions? The challenge for Norway is that we have, well, there's a lot of challenges, of course, but the challenge will be, of course, to try and bring in the difficult issues in the consideration. When I think about the forest initiative, for example, there's a lot of focus on the reduction of carbon emissions, which is a very technical issue. But not so, and that, for example, in Guyana, the money from that the Guyana will get from the reduction or for not cutting their trees will actually be used to implement their low carbon strategy. But to then discuss issues like corruption in this context will be a challenge. Also because we know that in Guyana, for example, none of the governance assessments that have been undertaken by the international community has ever been endorsed by the government, which raises questions about the space you have to actually engage in these discussions. And then a political economy analysis could help you try and find where that space is.
I don't think that political economy, as I've described it and is generally discussed among donors, is new. It's not new. It's based on some very long-standing political science research and theory. What's new is that development practitioners are starting to take it seriously. But the real question is whether they're going to be able to come to terms with the implications of that analysis, and in particular with the implication that in many of the countries in which they're working, there may be very little interest and appetite for a conventional donor agenda. And that raises the question of whether that assumption in the Paris Declaration of there being an alignment of interests between developing countries and donors is really there. Confronting that reality and then working out how, in that very challenging and difficult environment, one can nevertheless, as an external actor, do things that support progressive change. And for me, the question that arises from all these meetings is whether donors are simply going to use political economy analysis to add some insights to existing programs, or whether they're actually going to start confronting that reality and operating differently.